When I first heard that Nier Automata was going to be crossing over into Soul Calibur 6, I was absolutely ecstatic. After all, what's cooler than seeing your favorite character in another series you love? Guest stages are fantastic because they allow players to get a glimpse of their favorite characters in an entirely foreign world to interesting and creative effects. This then forces developers to distill their games down to only the best parts, opening a two-way door where characters from both worlds can show up in either IP. However, because of the many complications with acquiring licenses and the siloed nature of the video game industry, guest stages really aren't that common and typically are DLC. There are rare cases where they're not, such as Akuma in Tekken 7, Geralt in Soul Calibur 6, and Kratos in Mortal Kombat and Soul Calibur. I've already discussed the crossover stage on this channel before, Harumaru in Soul Calibur 6, and you can watch that video right here. If you're one of the few people who hasn't played Nier Automata yet, I won't get into any spoilers in this video, but you're doing yourself a disservice if you haven't played this game. The lore of the Nier universe, the way that story interacts with gameplay, and the music are just all so top-notch. This is the soundtrack that I always listen to when I'm trying to study or work on something creative. Nier Automata is the second game in the Nier series, which in itself is actually a spin-off of the Drakengard series, and was developed by Platinum Games and published by Square Enix in 2017. In-game, you play as 2B, a very attractive android fighting against a robot army in the 14th Machine War. Thousands of years ago, humans created androids in order to fight the machines for them on Earth, having decided to flee to the moon, and subsequently created the android organization Yorha to fight this war for them.
My old life is dead to me.
Alert. Hostile life form detected.
Eliminating threat.
Your corpse is proof enough of my victory.
I'll handle it.
As for the actual stage in Soul Calibur 6, the 7th game in the series, it was released in the 2B DLC for $5.99 USD, and came included with 2B as a playable character, the City Ruins Eternal Apocalypse stage, music, outfits and weapons, and so on. Once you've downloaded the DLC, the stage City Ruins Eternal Apocalypse can be found on the stage select screen. And as a quick side note, I really don't like the UI here because so many stages look similar and the picture when you hover over the stage isn't really clear either. It's just not well thought out in my opinion. But my tangent aside, as you select the City Ruins stage and the screen loads in, the announcer opens up with the line,
"Everything that lives is designed to end,"
which is actually the first line that 2B says in the opening of Nier Automata.
Everything that lives is designed to end. We are perpetually trapped in a never-ending spiral of life and death.
The camera then pans to an overhead shot of the city ruins, where your players stand on top of an abandoned building overrun by plant growth. City Ruins is actually one of the first areas in Nier Automata that you encounter, and it's this sort of eerie area that, coupled with the game's sparse, haunting music, I think really establishes the story beat that humans have fled the Earth and everyone is gone. This location is presumably Tokyo, Japan, and there are small little details littered throughout the original game to indicate this, like parking tickets written in Japanese. Players stand in an arena littered with broken branches, overgrown moss, some pink flowers, and wooden planks. One side of the stage is a fence made with various scrap metal, and on the other is a half-crumbled wall with rusted bars in front of the windows. On the ground, you can also see some abandoned buses and a herd of moose, which you can actually ride on in-game. In the background, you can also see some huge robots, spider bots, and UFOs just floating around. These are called Goliath bipeds, Goliath bipeds, enhanced leg power models, and flyers, respectively. On occasion, you might see various Nier characters also make a cameo appearance. Some of these encounters are random. For example, sometimes Pascal, a friendly robot that you meet in-game, will just float on by. There's also the Red Girls, who sometimes appear in the stage background and other times actually appear behind your characters. You might also catch a glimpse of Emil, a shy robot boy whose head is attached to a moving sales cart. Sometimes he's driving around in the background, and other times he's what I assume to be facing off against another robot. And as a side note, according to the Soul Calibur wiki, apparently you can hear Emil's theme playing in the background as he drives around, which is this catchy little jingle that he sings in the game to try to get you to buy his stuff. But for the life of me, I couldn't hear this jingle playing because the stage music is so loud. I also tried turning the music off in the stage and changing the stage music to a quieter song, but in both cases, I still couldn't hear this jingle. So I don't have a way of verifying this information for sure, but I think this is likely not true. And as far as I could tell, for Emil and the Red Girls, there's no pattern as to what these characters are doing or when they appear. Other cameos include Devil and Popola, a pair of red-haired twins who sit in the background by a tree branch and remain there for all the rounds. However, at other times, the cameos you see depends on what numbered fight you're actually on. And the clearest example of this is the robots that surround the platform your players are fighting on. There are various cheering robots that appear on stage that change with the progression of rounds. So at first, there's a single brown robot on top of the nearby wall. In the second round, another blue robot joins the brown one. Afterwards, another 2 of these robots appear in the third round, and then 2 more brown ones in the fourth, until the top row of the wall is completely full. Finally, in the 5th round, all of the robots completely disappear. And as a side note, as far as I know in the game, the robot enemies don't normally have blue eyes, but this might be a subplot that I'm not aware of that's part of the original lore. Also in the 5th round, a robot walking around on the left side of the wall appears, holding its hands up in the air. I think it's supposed to be holding the floating bucket there, so I'm assuming this is a glitch, but who knows. It walks around, does some flips, and is the only remaining machine by the wall in the final round. This robot is likely a reference to the bucket robot that you see in a playable cutscene that takes place in the second part of the game. There's also some machines that appear on the building across from the stage that also change over time. For rounds 1 and 2, there's no one there. However, in the 3rd round, a blue robot with blue pants appears. In the 4th round, you see a blue robot in what I presume to be some sort of confrontation with some yellow-eyed robots. Then, in the 5th and final round, the yellow-eyed robots are down for some reason, presumably the blue robots having won the fight. Other progression-based cameos of major characters include 9S, another Yorha android, and his robot companion, Pod 153, standing on a nearby branch where they remain from rounds 1 to 2. You can also see another android, A2, all the way back in the background, standing on top of the broken bridge, who stands there at rounds 1 through 4. On round 5, she pops up much closer to the stage, kind of hidden by the wall there. And do you remember earlier how I mentioned that in the final round, all of the robots besides the bucket robot disappeared in the final round? Well, A2 probably murdered them all, and you can see their mangled corpses on the ground. This is such a gruesome little detail, but I kind of love it because it's so in line with A2's personality. So at this point, you might be wondering, what happens to the background if you play for more than best of 3 or up to a total of 5 rounds, which is tournament standard? Well, then you might be disappointed because the stage remains the same after the 5th round and no further changes can be seen. With the stage being filled to the brim with all of these little cameos, the entire cast of Nier Automata is basically on the stage. There are so many references that I can't possibly catch them all, but I've tried my best here. Nier just has so much lore behind it that you can't just play the games. No, you have to watch the stage plays, read the novellas, see all 26 different endings, play the prequel game, play the mobile game, and then even after all of that, you've maybe uncovered like 50% of the iceberg. Now, switching gears a little bit, if we look at this area in Nier Automata itself, there are also a few differences between the Soul Calibur stage that I'd like to highlight. For one thing, the vibrant colors in the Soul Calibur stage are significantly more muted, again adding to that sort of solemn, haunting tone I think the game is trying to tell at the beginning of the story. The Soul Calibur development team definitely took some creative liberties when designing the stage, since in the original, it's just kind of a generic building. It's much more plain and actually kind of boring looking. There's also some ledges around the perimeter, preventing you from falling off the top of the building. The vine that 9S was standing on is much smaller than in the stage as well. Other, more smaller changes include the removal of the gate and the removal of a small waterfall in the distance. The building you are standing on is actually much shorter, whereas in Soul Calibur, all of the buildings are about equal height. Finally, the window on the stage looks significantly changed. The windows from Soul Calibur are much more like the ones actually on the side of the building instead. As for the music, the stage song is called City Ruins, Soul, and is essentially a Soul Caliburized remix of the City Ruins song from Nier Automata. It sounds much more grandiose with added percussion, brass, and small woodwind flourishes. The original song, also called City Ruins, has 4 different variations. In fact, all songs in this game have multiple versions depending on certain triggers, such as length of time spent in an area, the specific area you're in, whether or not you're in combat, or where you are in the story progression. I really like the Soul Calibur version of this song because they took something that's not really meant to be a battle theme and made it sound more energetic and appropriate for a fighting game. I think that this version could almost be like the secret final version of City Ruins because it's so orchestrated and very climactic. The only thing that I think is missing is that iconic Nier choir in the background. Nier Automata is one of my all-time favorite games, and I hope that if you haven't played the game, today's video gave you a glimpse into what makes it so special. If you have, well then hopefully I was able to show you something that you didn't know before. I really appreciate this crossover because I just love seeing the contrast between the Soul Calibur designs, which are much more medieval-like, and the Nier designs, which are much more futuristic and also have some sex appeal. It's just such an anachronism. Funnily enough, this is actually the closest Soul Calibur characters ever get to modern-day civilization, unless you want to count Star Wars. 2B just seems to be everywhere nowadays, pun intended, and I have a feeling that this will not be her last fighting game appearance. Thanks for watching. Nier is a franchise that is very important to me, so I hope I did the series justice in this short video. If you enjoyed it, please like, rate, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next one.